Imagine unearthing a lump of butter buried beneath an Irish bog, only to discover it is 3,000 years old and still recognizable. Now, imagine diving into the Mediterranean and recovering Roman jars that still preserve chemical traces of ancient fish sauce after 2 millennia. These discoveries force us to ask an astonishing question. How did ancient people preserve food long before electricity, refrigeration, or even the discovery of microbes? The answer is far more profound than simple survival. Hidden inside these forgotten techniques lies one of the greatest scientific achievements in human history, one that quietly transformed wandering hunter-gatherers into the architects of civilization itself. The greatest enemy of ancient food was never hunger itself. It was time. The moment an animal died or a plant was harvested, an invisible countdown began. Long before humans understood bacteria or chemistry, nature had already unleashed four relentless destroyers. First came bacteria. Under warm, moist conditions, a single bacterial cell could multiply into millions within hours, consuming nutrients and releasing dangerous toxins. Next came molds, scattering microscopic spores through the air and producing poisonous compounds that often survived even intense heat. A third enemy worked from within. Every living cell contains enzymes designed to break down biological tissues. After death, those same enzymes continue their work, slowly digesting muscle, fat, and organs from the inside out. Finally, insects arrived, laying eggs and accelerating decay even further. But here's the fascinating part. Although ancient people had no microscopes, they gradually learned something through generations of observation. Every successful preservation method attacked the same two weaknesses shared by these invisible enemies: water and oxygen. Dry the food, and microbes struggle to survive. Remove oxygen, and many harmful organisms stop growing. Lower the temperature, and chemical reactions slow dramatically. Add enough salt or acid, and microbial cells begin to collapse. Without realizing it, our ancestors were conducting practical experiments in microbiology thousands of years before science could explain why their methods worked. And that discovery changed everything. Long before salt roads crossed continents or cities rose from stone, humanity discovered its first preservation technology almost by accident: fire. Picture a band of Homo erectus standing beside the enormous carcass of an elephant or hippopotamus. That single hunt could provide millions of calories, far more meat than any group could consume before it spoiled. The real challenge was no longer finding food, it was preventing nature from reclaiming it. In dry regions, the solution was brilliantly simple. Thin strips of meat were spread across hot rocks beneath an unforgiving sun. Day after day, heat and wind drew moisture from every fiber until the meat became too dry for most bacteria to survive. What looked like ordinary drying was actually a precise manipulation of biology, depriving microorganisms of the water they desperately needed. Yet sunlight alone could not solve the problem in humid forests, where moisture lingered in the air. Here, another discovery emerged from the campfire. As wood burned slowly with limited oxygen, its smoke carried hundreds of chemical compounds. Tiny particles settled onto the meat, creating an invisible shield that discouraged bacterial growth while helping keep insects away. Over time, ancient people noticed that certain woods produced better results than others. Oak, apple, and other hardwoods preserved food more effectively, even though no one knew anything about phenols or organic acids. What they called experience, modern science now recognizes as remarkably sophisticated chemistry. If fire was humanity's first weapon against decay, salt became its greatest ally. Entire civilizations rose around it. The Romans even built the famous Via Salaria, a road dedicated to transporting salt across their empire. It was so valuable that the word salary traces its roots to allowances once associated with this precious mineral. But why was salt worth so much? The answer lies in physics. When salt covers fresh meat or fish, it creates a powerful osmotic force, pulling water out of both the food and the microbial cells trying to consume it. Deprived of water, those cells shrink, collapse, and eventually die. What ancient traders saw as a miracle was actually an elegant biological process. Yet some cultures discovered an even more surprising solution, not by destroying microorganisms, but by recruiting the right ones. The Romans perfected garum, a fermented fish sauce produced by layering fish and salt under the Mediterranean sun for months. Beneficial enzymes broke proteins into amino acids, creating the rich umami flavor, while the high salt concentration prevented dangerous bacteria from taking over. Across other regions, vegetables were transformed through lactic acid fermentation. Friendly bacteria converted natural sugars into lactic acid, steadily lowering the food's pH until harmful microbes could no longer survive. Without understanding microbiology, ancient societies had learned one of nature's greatest secrets. Sometimes the best way to defeat one microbe is to let another do the fighting for you. Not every civilization lived where sunlight was strong or salt was plentiful. So ancient engineers turned to something even more remarkable: the natural laws of heat itself. In the scorching deserts of Egypt, people created simple clay pot coolers that worked without a single moving part. One unglazed pot was placed inside another, with wet sand packed between them. As water slowly evaporated through the porous clay, it carried heat away from the inner chamber, lowering the temperature by as much as 15 degrees Celsius. Fruits, vegetables, and dairy could survive days longer in a landscape where the sun seemed determined to destroy them. Farther east, Persian engineers pushed the idea to extraordinary levels. They built towering structures known as yakshals, enormous domes rising from the desert floor. During freezing nights, water lost heat by radiating it into the clear sky, forming ice naturally. Thick insulating walls and carefully designed airflow kept that ice frozen throughout summers that regularly exceeded 40 degrees Celsius. Meanwhile, in Ireland, nature provided its own refrigerator. Cold, acidic peat bogs, almost completely deprived of oxygen, slowed microbial activity to a crawl. Butter buried within these wetlands transformed chemically into a wax-like substance known today as bog butter, remaining preserved for centuries, or even millennia. Different landscapes demanded different solutions, but they all revealed the same truth. Humanity had learned to control the environment long before it could fully explain the science behind it. Looking back, one remarkable pattern begins to emerge. Ancient people rarely relied on a single preservation method. Instead, they combined several techniques, unknowingly creating what food scientists today call hurdle technology or barrier technology. Imagine a traditional smoked sausage. First, salt removes much of the available water. Next, fermentation fills the food with lactic acid, making the environment too acidic for dangerous microbes. Smoking then coats the surface with antimicrobial compounds while forming a protective outer layer. Finally, drying reduces moisture even further, leaving bacteria with almost no chance to multiply. Any single barrier might fail on its own, but together, they overwhelm even the hardiest microorganisms. Every additional obstacle demands more energy from invading microbes until survival becomes impossible. This principle remains at the heart of modern food preservation. Refrigeration slows microbial growth. Vacuum packaging removes oxygen. Pasteurization reduces microbial populations. Preservatives create additional barriers. Although today's technology is more precise, the underlying strategy has changed surprisingly little. The refrigerator in your kitchen may look worlds apart from a Persian icehouse or an Irish peat bog, yet all of them follow the same timeless scientific principle. Modern food science did not replace ancient wisdom. In many ways, it simply gave names to discoveries our ancestors had already mastered thousands of years ago. The history of food preservation is really the history of human ingenuity. Fire, salt, fermentation, smoke, and natural cooling all became invisible barriers against decay, allowing civilizations to thrive. Every time you open your refrigerator today, you're using the same scientific principles our ancestors discovered thousands of years ago. Proof that some of humanity's greatest innovations never truly became obsolete. If you enjoyed this journey into ancient science, don't forget to subscribe and let us know in the comments. Which ancient preservation method surprised you the most? And could any of these forgotten techniques still help us build a more sustainable future?